through some news here before we get to Helen, and she's going to have a presentation to go through on her POV of all this. We had a job. So Frank, I must admit, I was a little surprised by this, and I haven't had a chance to go in and do a deep dive on this. I'm not sure if somebody has. If they have, I'd love to hear from them. But this surprises a little bit, I think, Frank, didn't it?
It got shocked by the numbers, and it didn't tie out with what ADP was predicting. So it makes you wonder what's real about it or not. Plus the past corrections and all that. But we are seeing is I think it's 80% of these jobs are healthcare jobs that it's continuing to grow. But we're just still not seeing the data tie out. So at some point, we got to get the real numbers and get some of the emotion out of it and really see what the data has been over points of time.
The Mercor story is front and center. We all know, I think everyone on this call knows about this story at this point. This is a problem, Houston. And this is what Helen's here to talk about. I'm sure she's going to comment on Mercor specifically. If not, this is a precursor to, I suspect, a slew of these, because this is a microcosm. If you can imagine all these startups, agentic AI native startups that are coming to marketplace, they're moving so fast. So this is actually an amazing moment. However, it looks to me like Mercor just simply outran its own tech, outran its own security devices, didn't think everything through, where feeds were coming from. And I know Helen's going to go into this a little bit, so I won't pause. I won't go into it in detail. But obviously, we got a problem here. We're moving really fast, Frank. I mean, this stuff is just so. I mean, it's almost like we threw cybersecurity out the window. Like we didn't even like. I'm not even going to think about that too much. If I do, I'm not going to think about it nearly as much as I ought to be. And Mercor, in this case, got caught with their pants down. It looks like, Frank.
And there's so many basics that are caught by organizations that, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z. But I don't know that exists in the AI world. And also the visibility. Clearly it means something when Meta says we're going to stop doing business or pause doing business with an organization. We know Workday got nabbed with data breach, but they posted it on their site like they're supposed to, except they removed all the ability of Google robots and these news robots to be able to search and post it, and repost it. So, there are people playing games. I'm glad this became visible and eager to hear more about what's going on.
Does Mercor survive this, Frank?
I think so. We'll see how this all plays out. But hey, it means something when Meta is saying, "Hey, I'm not going to do business with you." How many of their other clients will either pause or stop doing business? We'll see. And it's going to mean something if someone says, "Hey, I'm done with this."
Well, that's kind of what I'm picking up on. Is it's only a matter of time. It seems to me, before someone does that. Meta's almost doing that, but at some point, I mean, they're processing payroll, aren't they? Mercor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine with when I was with ADP processing $2 trillion a year? Nothing. You cannot let any. You want to take down an economy, have some of that get impacted. There's no way we can allow certain organizations, especially with payroll touching so much of the economy.
Yeah, this is a beauty. And Jeff, maybe you can comment on this, but basically, we can get hacked many different ways. This is going to come at us from every single angle. And again, I'm not sure we've done enough, certainly, as we're going to have to do to make sure these systems are buttoned down. But Jeff, I don't know, you just want to kind of run through the list of ways we can get violated by this stuff?
Yeah, so as the article mentions, Google DeepMind just released a research finding on the 6 ways that you can get hijacked, your AI agent can get hijacked, and here they are. We spoke briefly a few calls back about prompt injection. And that's basically where there's hidden instructions that are embedded into the content that the AI is reviewing. So it could be in a web page, an email, a doc, and it redirects what it does without the user knowing. There's actually a new thing that's going around right now where they can hide prompt injections inside of images. So if you're on a website and your AI agent is venturing out to that specific website, there's data that's hidden inside of an image that is uh, unviewable to the human eye, but the AI agent will pick it up. And then now that's another vulnerability that's out there. There's also goal hijacking, memory poisoning, tool misuse, multi-agent attacks, model extraction. I'm not going to bore you with it, but basically what I'm trying to say is security is going to be a major concern as we move forward with AI agents, how we're using them, and we have to keep that in mind.
This is, I mean, we're spending a lot of money on this year, and about 10% of it on security. So I'm not sure if that's good or bad. I don't know how that relates to it. I think they're positioning that it's not enough, but I don't know what the right algorithm is for percentage of spend on security versus the core applications. But this is a big deal. $2.5 trillion going to be spent on this new stuff. And obviously, it's not quite secure yet. Hey, Ken, what's going on?
With all the positive aspects of AI, clearly there's some bad actors, right? That have already figured out it's super powerful, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember the article or where I was, honestly. There was an article or something to the effect of there's some companies that have taken AI and now they've gone back against their competitors, right? And they're testing their website. They're testing all the boundaries they can find with AI for any vulnerabilities, right? And there was something in that article that said, there's companies that survived like 10 or 15 years with a vulnerability that they didn't know, right? And nobody like uncovered it, but AI is uncovering them. And now a competitor can take advantage of that and say, oh, by the way, Firefox or something is really, wide open, right? And so I think that there's that piece, right? There's the competition piece of using it to get an edge over a competitor. There's bad actors, of course, for high cyber attacks, right? And I also think that the AI, the models are changing so dramatically and so quickly, and the versions and the combined elements of them, that even AI today, if you were to find something and fix it, it could still find somebody who's using an old version, right?
Sure.
Or right. So just because you fixed it forward or something, it doesn't mean that there's not systems that still can't be, impacted, just based on how many variations of the tools and things that are out there. So,
yeah, it's probably important to remember that while this feels like it's been going on for a long time, ChatGPT itself only came out, 3 years ago? We're moving at light speed. Like, we've never seen this kind of pace before. Having lived through client server and e-commerce and Y2K and, all that. This is nothing. All of that combined is nothing like the pace of this. And we've got development now in the hands of us.
That's right.
We used to have to go to people to say, hey, will this work? I've got an idea. And a business analyst would come in and say, okay, your idea needs to be fleshed out into some kind of executable document. And then the techies would come in and tell you why it can't be done. And then the security guys would come in and say why it can't be done. And you'd have to overcome all those objections and friction at the front end of a development project, because there were a lot of concerns about it exposing the enterprise to risk.
Yeah.
It seems like this go around, heck with that. We'll come back around to that. And it's revealing some serious challenges, right?
Well, and even if you did, David, hey, we go to security. What are the things that they test? We test penetration testing, and we test this and virus and this and that. AI is a whole new world. We need a whole new platform of evaluating risk, and those folks probably are not armed with a way to really secure a platform, because it's changing so fast.
At an enterprise level, I agree with that, right? I mean, I think you start to look at all the different functions, and you've got some people who may be doing some rogue agents on their own, right? Some are built into products, and then you've got to try to figure out how to integrate that in a total enterprise security stuff. I mean, that is daunting.
Ken, there's got to be a disgruntled Oracle engineer that knows the keys to the security castle, right? I mean, right now, I would think, the people who built some of this stuff on the corporate servers. Call me crazy, but if I get fired by you, I'm going to leave a little present for you in aisle 12 on the way out the door. And you're not going to like very much once it metastasizes through your entire enterprise stack. And we don't even know what Mercor did or didn't do. it looks like it's some kind of relationship with a provisioner, another system dependency. But will it surprise anybody if Oracle gets a hack in the next month or so? It won't surprise me.
We're going to see more of these for a while until somebody gets kind of a handle on it, for sure.
Right on, right on. All right, Jeff, we can roll. We're spending about 10% of our build on security. I thought that was actually kind of high. I kind of find that hard to believe, actually, but it looks like we are spending a sizable amount of money. The number that jumped out at me is at 2.5 trillion. Is the massive movement, which explains Mercor. If you think about what really happens with a company like Mercor, having been there, is they're under such severe pressure to get to market. They're not going to be as buttoned down as they would be if they were ADP. ADP is going to have much more of a Fort Knox treatment to their legacy stack than a Mercor will be allowed to have by their money people. So this new investment, global AI spending 2.5 trillion, is very risky money. That's 2.5 trillion being put at risk without sufficient securities, as Mercor and others have just demonstrated. To me, that's the headline. We're moving so fast. That kind of velocity of 2.5 trillion, that velocity is extreme. That's something we probably haven't seen before either, to that right. Kind of investment. And that investment itself puts pressure on velocity. I want my ROI, I want my flip, I want to, whatever it is. They're in it to make money. And that's probably letting them turn a little bit of a blind eye to the backdoor security issues. Yeah. To me, that's the takeaway there.
You bet.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Helen Sharron Pollard, who is not only my wife, but she's the one that got me into all this, Frank.
Thank you. Okay, fabulous. So there may be a little bit of formatting thing because I did this on PowerPoint and I think we're seeing this on Google Slides. So forgive anything there. But hello, everyone. I am Helen Sharron Pollard, as David said. So thank you very much for being here today. And as we've seen in the headlines, we're talking about them today. We're talking about some recent events. And I like to tie them together for you so that you have a understanding of what I'm seeing as someone who now has been in the blockchain AI space for the last 3 years, and what we have come to understand what the regulatory environment is saying to us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the EU AI Act enforcement clock, the Trivi Light LLM breach, which hit Mercor. I think in some regards they're a victim here, so we can talk about that a bit. And then some interesting results that came out of a Cloud Security Alliance AI survey, which should make all of us really a little bit frightened for the moment. So across the world, across various regulatory bodies in the US and the EU and the UK and Singapore, Brazil, Australia, what we're hearing back these are the things that the regulatory agents want to see. Auditability, the proof that the work that actually happened by the agents. What did they actually do? Traceability, what happened step by step. Explainability, beyond describing the model, it's being able to explain why a specific decision was made. And that's based on inputs of the context and the system behavior at the moment. And then they want a reconstruction of the decisions, replay the full decision. So it's not enough to know that a decision is made. What we need to know is what happened, why it happened, and to be able to reconstruct it if challenged. And that's what we're seeing in this Trivi Light LLM issue that we've talked about today, why this matters. So I have a website, rosé.xyz, and I have a compliance assessment on that website. So you can go in and take this assessment, and it should help you. It goes across every single regulatory law that's out there today, and it asks a number of questions, and as the law is enacted by that particular question, it will tell you the components of it and why it matters for what it is that you do. So it's kind of an interesting tool and something that you're all free to take a look at, and it's a good place maybe to come back to. But compliance law is clear right now. Anything that's a decision and a decision process in hiring a candidate is a high risk activity because those decisions impact and affect people. right? So this tool itself has been designed to put together and incorporate all the laws worldwide, especially in the US, that have regulatory implications on AI usage. So try it. If we can post the link in the chat, that'd be great. But the premise here is that AI is increasingly influencing how candidates are screened, ranked, and selected, and those decisions impact livelihoods. And at the same time, legal scrutiny is increased, like Mobley versus Workday, which we're all well aware of. And the question isn't simply whether AI is efficient or if it's scalable, because we all know it is. The question is whether we can stand behind the outcomes that it produces. So if you as talent acquisition hires using products across the world, if a decision was challenged today in court or by a candidate with you, could you show the work that your AI agents did? And I suspect that there isn't an organization that you're working with today that can say yes, which is a bit scary.
My only comment, Helen, I guess is more of a comment, is I think this is slightly different than Mobley's exposure. I think to my POV, and I'm not sure there's a question, just observation, is Mobley was sort of a generic discrimination case. The ISIMs and the Eightfold are getting more and more specific. So I suspect as we move forward, the cases will get more intelligent as the systems and the users get more aware and intelligent about how this all works. Mobley just went at it from a pure discriminatory standpoint. I didn't get a job, and I'm an African-American disabled person, 100 times tried. Right. Didn't get it. The outcome is what he's attesting that the outcome is what he was discriminated. I think that as we go forward, it's going to get much more detailed, much more about the black box.
And will the vendors, I think to Helen's point, will the vendors be able to open the kimono and show, here's, how the widget went through the process. And if Workday's struggling in the Mobley case to show it, if it's a more detailed, like you're saying, case in the future, how are they going to address that? Can we show the work? I love the way you framed that, Helen. Thanks.
Here. Can you reconstruct the hiring decisions with AI in the loop, right? Can you trace the inputs and the outputs? Can you explain? And can you explain those outcomes confidently? So, and as you said, Mobley versus Workday, they're bringing a new level of attention to how AI is used in hiring. And the expectation is shifting exactly as you said, Frank. It's no longer enough to say, we designed the system to be fair. The question is, can you explain what actually happens with a specific decision? And that's what all of you need to start training your ears to hear, right? And look for. Okay.
Helen, you are getting some questions.
Hey, Tom here. Thank you for walking us through this interesting so far. I was curious your point of view on what exactly a decision is, and I'm thinking about some of the like the entry points that a lot of companies have to using AI and talent attraction, and it can be like, how do you score a candidate or how do you rank a candidate? And most of the companies, I think, are taking the position that that's not a decision, because a person is then going to judge for themselves whether they agree with that scoring and ranking, and they're going to make their own decisions about whether to move forward with that person. Would you agree with that position, that it's not a decision, or is it a decision by itself?
Well, there's two things, and it's a very good question. So thank you for that. So there's two things that we're seeing, a decision versus a signal, right? And so you want to be able to know what your AI agent did. So a signal is telling maybe a talent acquisition specialist or recruiter, hey, these are the top 50 candidates or 10 candidates for the role that you're looking to hire for. And that's the signal. It's just saying that this is what your AI agent found. But the decision is, I have ranked these candidates in this order. So those are two different things. And this is also an organization can make a determination where a decision and where a signal crosses, and they're allowed to make that and say that as part of their structure. But a decision is really the important point here, and that's the thing that you want to make sure that you've got your arms around. This is what your agent decided on your behalf. Now you can go back and change it. You can go back and say, I don't agree with the decision, but that's a decision that's being made.
I think we'll go to Bill real quickly, but I suspect that the eightfold case, if it ever gets downstream, will clarify that 100%, because the fair credit scoring was really kind of a brilliant side door strategy to assert that that is exactly what's happening. The signal is the decision. The signal, a set of signals, if you're saying these 5 people scored algorithmically higher than the other 995, that is a decision.
Well, it's
100%.
not. That's
Right.
not, because if you're telling somebody that's the score, that's one thing. But when you're creating the hierarchy, that's another. See, there's the subtlety there.
We'll see with the eightfold case.
Okay, we will.
I don't know that they're asserting that, to be honest with you. They're asserting that fair credit scoring is happening without my involvement. I think that's the essence of that case. I suspect once that case matriculates a little bit, they will get to that question, and I'll bet you $1 that the definition of a decision will be determined by that case. I suspect. Bill, let's get Bill on here, Helen. He's been
Just real, hey, Tom Stabler, good seeing you. Last time we connected was when I was at AmeriHealth, and our CISO put you guys into some deep dark corners as we were evaluating AppCast. So good seeing you. Helen, here's my question. Like this right here, as a TA leader, we cannot answer these questions. I can tell you, and I have a degree in computer science, and I was not able to answer a lot of these questions. And I'm hearing that like companies like Warden AI, are there third party companies out there? Because the vendors are going to be reluctant. I think David, you had mentioned, are they going to open the kimono? And I haven't seen it yet. But are there third party companies out there that can help us in evaluating these things, that can certify or do the audit? I know you've got, here's what's out there in terms of what you need to be aware of, but is there anybody out there actually doing these audits on these vendors? Because most organizations can't answer these questions based on the technology they buy.
Well, I thank you for that question. The check is in the mail, and it's something that I'm going to tee up for you, because one of the reasons why I am talking to all this group is because I've seen myself that this is a problem. And when we built out the company that David alluded to earlier in the call, Rosé, we've got the ability to track what your agents are doing. And so I'd like to talk about that a little bit later in the slide. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what the problem is, and then what proof looks like, et cetera. And again, what the Cloud Security Alliance talks about as well, and where this is, because you're right. This is few and far between to get that independent level of proof on how this gets handled. And this requires AI agent excellence, right? But it also requires time-stamped and blockchain utility in the background. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is. And I also would say, if you want to, if there's a conversation that people would like to have a little bit, to go a little bit deeper into what that technology might look like that could solve this problem, that would be great. The A16Z, which is the number one high-tech VC firm on the planet, puts out a yearly, this is what we want to see. And in December 2025, what they said is they want to be able to see proof of work for agents. So this is a very big topic. There are a couple other questions here. Can we move forward, or is there a question that someone thinks is really something that should be asked at this very moment?
Keep moving.
Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, so let's go into the EU AI Act delay. And I'm sorry this slide didn't come out quite so crisply on the Google sheets, but there's a white paper here on that slide as well that talks a little bit about this. So you're probably all aware this happened on March 18th, so just a couple of weeks ago, that the EU AI Act, the EU Parliament Committee voted to delay the high-risk AI systems obligations to December 2027. So those are the monetary concerns, right? That we were all scared that we're going to start in August, because the EU AI delay here is noting that they're backpedaling a little bit not on the requirement, but that they're acknowledging that they have a gap in the mechanisms, that they are acknowledging that there's no systems out there today that actually are able to do the kind of monitoring that they know is required, and they themselves can't do it. They wouldn't know how to be able to assess whether or not your agents have done the work for you. So that's a pretty wild thing to have happen. But it isn't taking away the requirements that you have to show your work, to do the assessments that they've required. Remember too that there's state laws that govern some of these actions, like the New York City law on unemployment. There's laws in Colorado, there's laws in Texas and in California. So, and there's also the legal environment that expects an accounting for any AI systems being used, right? So whether you attended fairness in what it is that you did isn't good enough. It's, can you prove what happens? Are there any particular questions on this one? And please feel free to go in and read those papers and download the white paper if you think it might help you.
Helen, will this be the de facto standard that the U.S. adopts? Do you think the EU?
Oh, I think it very much will. Yeah.
So that'd be a good document for us all to get to know a little bit. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely there. And, you know, it's generated with the help of AI. There's no doubt about it. And I want to be totally transparent about it. But it's also generated by somebody that's been working with AI and blockchain for a couple of years now, and has deep roots into the space because, you know, the product that we own, Talent Fusion, and Sold to Monster, we were in the cutting edge of this for a while. So I do have a little bit of understanding of what you're all going through right now. I just also want to call out, and this is really to, you know, hold the four corners of this hard. We've seen this all before, right? I have 25 years of financial services technology, maybe a little bit more. And we demanded accountability in the enterprise level, right? So I had a debate with a systems architect who was new to financial services one time, and the argument was, if an upstream system failed to deliver a file correctly or on time, that wasn't our problem. That was an upstream problem, and we're all good and hurt to not have received that file on time on behalf of clients who are counting on our files for their KPI measurements and for their own processing. We don't get to stand on that ceremony in the enterprise. We have to say that from a design perspective, while he could be right, when you're dealing with other people's money, that's not how reality works. That data is critical, and it doesn't matter where the error is generated. So if a file is wrong or it's late or it's incomplete, the downstream system is still accountable for the outcome. So we don't just trust upstream systems. We verify them. We build in checks. We reconcile inputs. We create alerts. Because the real rule was this: every error must be caught and resolved before it becomes a service level issue. And that's exactly where we are with AI, right? This is that we're here today is pretty pathetic, because we should be aware of what enterprise systems are doing and building this in. But this is all new. It's rogue. People are running forward and building systems out right now without, you know, that kind of systems knowledge to take a look at how this should be indicated and actioned. Are any questions on that one?
My question is this: you know, I sat in yesterday on a kind of a PR event for the new Boom Band product and listened to what they're doing. And I've previously I sat in on another event in Boston around both how AI is impacting hiring. And all I can think about as we're talking about this topic is how what the industry is trying to do right now is take AI and do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 35 or 30 years in the industry, which is fill the top of the funnel, see if we can assess candidates, see if we can grade them, score them. And in all of this topic, we're also trying to fix biases, etc., which is what we're talking about here. And then I want to ask, because there's a lot of brain trust in here. And there's people here who have more knowledge than I could ever imagine having access to. So I'm going to ask you the question. When are we in the industry going to say the only way we're going to eliminate bias is to empower the candidate and then use blockchain, which since you mentioned it, and AI to create, zero knowledge base access where you're providing proof and validation that the individual meets the criteria to be the best candidate for you without letting out whether they went to Howard University versus Harvard, or whether they live in Mattapan, Massachusetts, or whether they live in Wellesley, where biases can come from all sorts of aspects. But I guess my question is, why is the industry not willing to empower the candidate to have more control of their information, more say on who has access to their CVs and resumes, and also hold them accountable and hold employers accountable? Because it's two sides, right? That's where the problem is. We're dealing with two sides of this market. So just throwing that broad question out there.
I really appreciate that. Is there anybody from Boom Band on a call with us today? I'm going to answer you as, was that a yes?
No, there's no, but I don't think there's anybody on the call.
Yeah, I know they're going live in April, so they've been heads down. And lovely to see the demos, right? So I find it very interesting. Well, let me answer this question as clearly as I can from my vantage point. AI sucked all the oxygen in the room from what was happening in the blockchain, where those ZK proofs and all that you're talking about, all the POAPs, all the ability to be able to define who you are behind a firewall, so that you couldn't be compromised by the entire systems, so that you could have your skills out there, but not necessarily who you were. All of that was actually where we came out running, and where we started to build out our program. But it was really very difficult to do those builds because AI overtook the rooms, and those things are coming on board, and they should be. Those are coming on board, and those will be coming out shortly because AI will make it happen. But I think that that's really an important consideration and something that we should all be keeping an eye on the prize. We need first principle development where the individual candidate has clear sailing and doesn't have to worry about being compromised. Because I really am looking forward to a time where I exist and nobody knows who I am. And my work exists, and I can go out and build and produce without being doxxed by systems. I think that's what you were saying. So hopefully it's coming.
Saeed, it was great to see you. We should talk soon. I suspect the business answer is because they don't want to, because they don't have to. Nobody's making them do that. The buyers never reveal anything they don't have to reveal, ever. They're never going to reveal anything that they're going to have to. I think the fix is to me is real simple. Eliminate the black box.
Let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about Trivy and Light LLM, because these are ripped from the headlines kinds of things, and I think it would be good to spend a few minutes on this so that people kind of understand. They talk about supply chain vulnerability. Right. So when I just talked about the enterprise and how one system in the enterprise would have alerts and all of that for the downstream systems, this is something that we really need to build within our AI systems. So there was an incident where a release appeared that didn't follow the expected authorized build path. And that was through a supply chain attack. And here's the sequence of that. An attacker gained access to credentials to the ecosystem that's around Trivy. And Trivy is a supposedly secure system that allows development code to get deployed. It's continuous integration and continuous deployment. And they're supposed to determine security risks and help your development tools to see where you might have a risk. So that's what happened with Trivy. And then that access enabled unauthorized publishing activity. And there were malicious versions of Light LLM that were introduced, right? So they weren't the right versions. And those versions did not come from the official GitHub CI/CD, which is the continuous development or continuous deployment release pipeline. And so downstream systems, including companies like Mercor, ran on those packages because it looked fine to them. And there was nobody checking the versions to say, this isn't in my library. Is this wrong? So the key point here is the system looked normal until you asked where the release actually came from. And there was an identity failure on Trivy, and there was a release integrity failure on the Light LLM. There was no matching build executed in the CI/CD. No authorized release path produced it. The birth certificate of the software was missing, right? So that wasn't encoded anywhere. And then there was a downstream trust propagation. So systems consuming Light LLM installed the package, treated it as legitimate, and the malicious code was executed, credentials were harvested, and it persisted downstream because it looked legitimate. And no system asked, did this release come from an expected path, and does the artifact match the build? So, and then back to what the regulatory body is saying is, can your systems prove what your AI agents did? And there isn't one of them that could. And so this got propagated and propagated and propagated. And Mercer can't tell you what happens. And they're sort of left holding the bag, and they are taking on some reputational damage here. So it's kind of an issue. So the proof of the agent work here, why that proof matters is you need to be able to reconstruct an outcome. So if somebody caught somewhere that there's an issue, right, they should be able to reconstruct it and say, oh, this is exactly what happens. And they should be able to isolate the failure points and say, oh, it happened with LLM. And, oh, Mercer, everybody that used this version of software or this got on this version of our program got implicated, and here's what happened. But unfortunately, nobody can tell them that. And there's no corrections that happened in your real time. So with AI, the question is no longer what did the model attend? The question is, what can you prove that it did? What could we rewrite here? So what could have happened? If Trivy had been using the software that the regulatory agents asked for, they could have said what data was accessed. They could have said what a model handled it. They could have said what transformations occurred. They could have said, here's the untrusted artifact. They could have said, here's what the root cause analysis is. They could have said, how do we contain a problem or a breach? And they could have said, how do we ensure that every system in the supply chain is able to prove their output? So that's where we need to get to.
And none of that happened in the Mercor case, Helen. Is that what you're saying?
None of that's happening today.
At all.
At all.
And I don't know, to Helen's point, I don't know that there's a process to evaluate all these steps.
That's right. Right. So the responsibility in these systems is distributed, right? And this is your supply chain level proof that you need to have and that we need to look at, right?
Now, can I ask a question?
Sure,
It's
absolutely.
bothering me for months is, where would DIY agentic development fit into the schema? In other words, we heard Bill Malcolm. I'm not sure, Bill, if you're here today, but we're seeing a lot of sponsored work inside the enterprise to just go out and propagate. Just go, start building. I don't hear any of these line items even being discussed. Just go. It's Anthropic. Go. It's ChatGPT. It's Claude. Go build something. And
you're at risk. You're at risk. Where's your insurance? You're at risk. For sure.
I would think so too.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Right. So we should all be talking about this. right? And this is what I'm trying to help do, because there's a lot of new tools coming out in the talent acquisition piece. It's one of the first ones being rewritten all the way through and first principle code using AI. And yet this is what they call a black box problem. So I think this one's really quite interesting. The Cloud Security Alliance. So and again, this is also available on that Rosé website. So, I'm just talking about things where there's a lot more information that you can avail yourself. And I find this all very fascinating. So the Cloud Security Alliance was asked, this is an organization, it's a 501(c), and they were asked to do a poll on AI agents and what the work is. And I think these statistics are staggering, right? If you take a look at it, 85% of companies surveyed, are running agents in production, right? 85% of companies today have AI agents in production. 68 of them have a log fidelity problem. They cannot distinguish an agent for a human in their logs, right? And your own logs within your systems, these aren't proof. These won't hold up in court in proof, because logs within your systems are mutable. They can be changed. So you've got to take a look at finding a way to write your logs in a way that they are immutable. And that screams out blockchain. 84% of those companies running autonomous agents don't believe that they could pass the compliance test. I actually think it's 100% of them, but at least 16% of them think that they possibly could. That's pretty scary, right? These aren't small companies that are being asked, right? And 28% of them can track agents across environments, which we just talked about. What happened with Trivy, Light LLM, and Mercor? Who's tracking what the agents do? And you're all making assumptions about what your upstream systems are. So you should be holding them accountable. How are you tracking this? But without independent proof, one has no defense in courts, and there's no regulatory compliance, and there's no scalable agent economy. So I think that is something that's quite important for us to understand. So hopefully you understand right now, with what we've gone over today, that we aren't really in a very good place with all this AI agent work that's out there. And we talked a bit about this. If a hiring decision was made with AI and it was challenged, what could you show? What could you reconstruct that happened? Could you trace inputs to outputs? And probably the answer to all of those is no. And could you explain the outcome with confidence? So it's not a new problem. We've seen it before. We've solved it from moving trust to verification. So I think it's an important step that we should all be taking a look at. And AI is now reaching that same moment, and the organizations that can clearly show what happens across systems or across decisions, those are the ones that are going to be trusted to move forward. And if you're representing a company today, it's a wonderful thing to start talking about what that might look like, how you can get in front of this, so that when those fines do start coming to home to roost in 16 or 18 months, that you actually would be a company that could be in front of that and say, yes, our systems are compliant.
Are there different expectations, punishments for different size companies as far as these risks? Great question.
Yes, there are. And I don't want to hype too much, the Rosé environment, because this is something that we can do. But there are those questionnaires that you can go through, and they're really very telling. And there are certain size limitations under 50 million. And over 50 million, and then there's the in between where the risks change for you. So you can take a look there. But yes, that's a great question.
Ronnie suggests, Helen, that we need to find a way to get leadership to care, and I think that's exactly correct.
Leadership to what, David?
Just leadership in general. She said to care about this topic, and they will soon enough. They will, if there's a big enough breach. They will then. But I think it brings up an interesting question for my TA colleagues, is like bundling this is critical to me. Like, it can't just be bursting into the CISO office and say, I've got an answer to the security problem. I think it's got to be attached to value, attached to driving performance of some kind. And like the implementation is when to catch this stuff, right? If we're moving the needle with agentic AI, make sure the needle includes some of these provisions that you're talking about. And that would set you up for a very secure implementation. And that's something I think HR really should own, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and leadership here, and those numbers that you're talking about, David, they become really huge when you look at liability, right? Like, how big is the liability now for Trivium, Mercor, and Light LLM? 50 to 100 million easy. Right.
Mhm.
So if you're, if you had your systems and you could have tracked what your agents were doing, you could have controlled this. You would be able to say, well, at least at this place, I was clean, and I don't have the liability that some of my upstream or downstream systems have. So the reputational damage alone is huge, right? What happens, if you think about it from a I'm sorry, from just the VC, like they've put a lot of money into your system. What's going to happen to them, right? What's going to happen to Trivi? Will that system really be able to handle it? There's a reputational and legal exposure. Enterprise clients, what's their data exposure, right? Because you need to, what is that going to cost your company to do the root cause analysis and start talking to all of your enterprise clients about what the data exposure is and who got hurt? Eventually you're going to find out who the candidates are, who the workers are, who the end users are, and what the level of exposure was to their data. So there is huge. Go ahead, David.
Oh, that's Ronnie and Vanessa said some things. I'm just watching the chat. Interesting comments. Ronnie and Vanessa are asking two sides of, I think, a very similar coin question. Is we need to find a way to get leadership to care about this, and leadership cares when they. And Vanessa says leadership will care when they're in the headlines. They'll care a lot. And Bill follows up by saying that dialogue has to happen in the sales cycle. And that's exactly right. I think that what happened here is this stuff got out of the barn so fast, without any consideration for this back end problem, and now the headlines are going to happen. So the opportunity for that is right now. So
yeah, it does. Well, for sure, and we see this as a really huge problem. And this is my call out to you today: is this for a problem for everybody? And we have scoured the universe. Don't know anybody that does what we actually can do. So if anyone's interested in talking more about it, because you think your leadership team would be interested in these kinds of protections, let me know. Our hope is that we can start helping the enterprise, and certainly we're going to be talking with the Cloud Security Alliance on what the CISOs should be caring about their the chief information security officers, right? Because they're the ones that are going to be holding the bag for their companies. But yeah.
That's great. Based on the questions that I'm seeing, Helen, in the chat room, this is so early. We're asking rudimentary but very critical, basic questions about this stuff, and we don't have the answers. That's why we're asking the questions. So I want to, thank you on behalf of the TATL coming in like this and sharing your wisdom. If you guys have questions for Helen, Rosé, what they can maybe do for you guys in all this regard, please feel free.
Sure. Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. My name is, you can find me on my website as well. I'm very, very happy to talk to anybody about this. It helps me all the time just to hear from, potential people with different ways of looking at this. But I promise you, as a senior technology leader with close to 30 years of experience, I've been running large scale enterprise engagements for a really long time. And the team that I've amassed is amazing. We think we've got this. Yeah.
Helen, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming in. Thanks everyone.
Guys.
Thanks again, Helen.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you all.
Hey, bye, everybody.
Cheers.